3.Borobudur True Back History Book. Part 3. The Works of Santosaba. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies and studies, it is not defaming ethnic races and religions, but in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. Indonesia Arya. By Santosaba. Exploration and Research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +6 2813 2132 9787. Patanjali in his Mahabhashya quotes and accepts Panini's definition, then discusses or mentions it at a greater length, in 18 cases, which states that metaphor definitions are relevant to many contexts. The Tantric word, Patanjali states, means head, play. He used the same example of Svatantra as a compound word of sva, self, and Tantra, then stated, Svatantra means an independent person, as one's own master, the main thing for who he is, interpreting the definition of Tantra. Patanjali also offers a semantic definition of Tantra, which states that it is a structural rule, standard procedure, centralized guide or knowledge in the field that applies to many elements. In Hinduism, the Tantra tradition is most often associated with a goddess tradition called Shaktism, followed by Shaivism and Vaishnavism. In Buddhism, the Vajrayana tradition is known for its vast tantric ideas and practices. Hindu and Buddhist tantric traditions have influenced other religious traditions such as Jainism, Sikhism, Tibetan Bon tradition, Taoism, and Japanese Shinto tradition. In Hinduism, tantric traditions are found in Shaivism's Shiva Siddhanta and Mantrapatha Bhairava, and in this Shaktism the Vidyapitha and Kulamarga traditions. The tantric text of the Vaishnava tradition is Pancharatra and is usually called agamas in the Shiva tradition. The term, Tantra, in the Hindu literary genre is usually used specifically to refer to Shakta agamas. The agamas literature is thick, and includes 28 Shakta agamas, 77 Shakta agamas, also called Tantra, and 108 Vaishnava agamas, also called Pancharatra Samhitas, and various Upa agamas. Some of the tantric texts in Hinduism are Vedic and others non-Vedic. Religious traditions include yoga and the concept of self-realization, some including Kundalini yoga, asceticism, and philosophies ranging from Dvaita, dualism, to Advaita, monism. The means of worship in Hindu Tantra practice differ from the Vedic form. While the Vedic yajna practices there are no idols and temples, in its tantric tradition, idols and symbolic icons with puja are the means of worship. Symbolism in places of worship, icons reminiscent of devotees of attributes and values is an important part of agamic practice, while the non-theistic path is not, one of the many alternative ways of Vedic practice. This, however, does not mean that the Tantra agamas and the Vedas are against, according to medieval-era Hindu theologians. Tirumular, for example, explains their link to the Veda as the path, and agamas as the horse. The term Tantra was not one originally used by Buddhism, as scholar Isabel Onions explains in her dissertation, Buddhist Tantra Apologetics, or Antinomianism as Norm, D. Phil. Dissertation, Oxford. Trinity Term 2001 pg 8. Tantra Buddhism is not a transcription of the original term, but a newer, more modern, if not truly Western view. The Sanskrit equivalent of Tantrika is found, but not in Buddhist texts. Tantrika is a term denoting someone who follows a sacred teaching known as Tantra, but only in Saivism, not Buddhism. Tantra Buddhism is the name for a phenomenon in Buddhism, in Sanskrit, Mantranaya, Vajrayana, Mantrayana or Mantramahayana, and there never seems to be a Tantrayana text. Its practitioners are known as mantrans, yogis, or sadhaka. So, we are using the anglicized adjective, tantric, for Buddhism taught in Tantra is not the original tradition, but is a borrowed term that serves a purpose. The decline in the journey of Tantra in Theravada Buddhism began with the emergence of reforms of Buddhist modernism in the 19th century, in particular the Dhammayattika Nikaya founded by King Rama IV, 1851-1868, of Thailand's Ratanakosin Raya in 1833, which was imported into Cambodia as a royal protectorate. In shaping the Dhammayattika Nikaya, Rama IV emphasized the use of the Pali Canon as the primary authority for monastic practice and also sought to remove all elements of superstitious and folk religions. We notice the word text, Tantra, in Buddhist philosophy, The word is found in the Chinese Buddhist canon of Tantra Vajrayana, or Tantra of Buddhism, volume 18 to 21, in about 500 to 600 AD, and the word Tantra we find predates Buddhism. And Hinduism existed in India, namely in Rigveda by 71.9 around 1700-1100 BC. Thus we can conclude that the word Tantra associated with the caloric inscription does not indicate that Sailendra does not adhere to Mahayana Buddhism or Hinduism. Hinduism in India, called Hinduism, began in the 19th century, under the dominance of Western colonialism and Indology, when the term Hinduism began to be widely used. Western scholars view Hinduism as an amalgamation or synthesis of various traditions and cultures in India, with diverse origins and no founding figure. Its roots include Brahmanism, ancient Vedic religion, religions of the Indus River Valley civilization, and popular local traditions. This synthesis arose around 500 to 200 BC, and grew alongside Buddhism until the 8th century. From North India, Hindu synthesis spread south to parts of Southeast Asia. Sangha, Sangha Pali, Sangha, Sanskrit, Sangha, Chinese, Sengjia Pinyin, Sengjia, Wylie, DGE, done as a Pali and Sanskrit word meaning relationship, assembly, association, or community, and most often refers to in Buddhism to the monastic community of monks, and nuns. These communities are traditionally referred to as bhikkhus, sangha, or nuns, sangha. As a separate category, those who have attained one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, whether or not they are ordained in monastics, it is called Aryasangha, noble sangha. According to the Theravada Buddhist school, the term sangha does not refer to either the Savaka community, lay followers, or the Buddhist community as a whole. In Buddhist glossary Richard Robinson et al. Define Sangha as, modern lay practitioners may use the word Sangha as a collective term for all Buddhists, but the Theravada Pali Canon uses the word Parisa, Sanskrit Parasad, for the larger Buddhist community, monks, nuns, men and women who, having and taking the 3 refuges, ordering Sangha, for a more limited use of the definition of Sangha. This word has 2 levels of meaning. 1. At the ideal Arya level, it denotes all the followers of the Buddha, ordained, who have at least attained the stage of Srotapanna. 2. At the conventional Samvyarti level denotes the orders of bhiksus and bhiksunis. Dharma. Dharma is a concept of central importance in Indian philosophy and religion. It has several meanings in Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. It is difficult to provide a single concise definition for dharma, as the word has a long and varied history and a complex understanding of its meaning and interpretation. 265. There is no equivalent or singular meaning in the translation of the word for dharma in the Western language. Dharma in Hinduism is an organizational principle that applies to humans in isolation, in their interactions with humans and nature, as well as between inanimate objects, for all the cosmos and its parts. It refers to the orders and customs that make up life and the universe, and includes behaviors, rituals, the rules that govern society, and ethics. Hindu Dharma includes worship, the moral rights and duties of each individual, as well as behavior that allows social order, proper behavior, and pious people. The Dharma in Buddhism to practice Buddhism, for Dharma, Dhamma in Pali, primarily as Dharma, generally means the teachings of the Buddha, commonly known throughout the East as Buddha Dharma. This includes primarily discourse on basic principles, such as the 4 Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, as opposed to parables and poetry. The Dharma refers not only to the sayings of the Buddha, but also to the traditions of interpretation and their additions to the various schools of Buddhism that have been developed to help explain and expand on Buddhism. The commonality of view is that they see Dharma as referring to truth, or the reality of, the real way things are, tib. Cho. The general view of Buddhism Dharma is one of the 3 jewels of Buddhism on which the practitioner of Buddhism takes refuge, or where one depends for his or her eternal happiness. The 3 jewels of Buddhism are the Buddha, which means the perfection of the mind of enlightenment, the Dharma, which means the teachings and methods of the Buddha, and the Sangha, which means the monastic community that provides guidance and support to Buddhists. The word Dharma in Jainism is found in all of its major texts. It has contextual meaning and refers to a number of ideas. In a broad sense, it means the teachings of Jina, the highest path, the socio-religious duties, and which is the highest Mangala, holy. The term Dharma also has a specific ontological and soteriological meaning in Jainism, as part of his theory of the six dravya, substance or reality. In the Jain tradition, existence consists of jiva, soul, atman, and ajiva, non-soul, the latter of which consists of five categories: inert non-living atomic matter pudgala, space, akasha, time, kala, principle motion, dharma, and the principle of rest, adharma. The use of the term dharma to mean movement and to refer to ontological subcategories is peculiar to Jainism, and is not found in the metaphysics of Buddhism and the various Hindu schools of religion. From the above explanation of the dharma, which is the word that is in the philosophy of India, it explains that the dharma does not only exist in the teachings of Buddhism. If the dharma is associated with the Buddhist philosophy of the three jewels of Buddhism or Buddha, which means the perfection of the mind of enlightenment, which is dharma, which means the teachings and methods of the Buddha, and sangha, which means the monastic community that provides guidance and support to Buddhist followers. The explanation that has been circulating for the caloric inscription states, the inscription mentions the construction of a sacred Buddha building for the Manjusri house, a statue containing the wisdom of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, Trinity same as Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshvara. The construction of this sacred building was ordered by King Indra. The use of the word Trinity in the above quote is not quite right, especially if it is induced by the word Trinity is the same as Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshvara. Because the meaning of the three jewels of Buddhism is Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is not referring or has the meaning of Trinity. In Buddhist understanding, the three words are as he explained above, namely, Dharma is praktika while Sangha is a community. Maheshvara. Maheshwari is Lord Mahesh, Shiva, also known as Maheshwar. Maheshwari is also known by the names Radri, Rudrani, Shankari, Shiva and Maheshi, derived from several names of Shiva: Rudra, Shiv, Shankar and Mahesh. Maheshwari is depicted sitting on a Nandi bull, and having 2, 4 or 6 arms. White olive skin, three-eyed goddess holding a trident, drum, beaded necklace, drinking bowl, axe and bull skull. She is decorated with a snake bracelet, a crescent moon and a headdress formed from a pile of hair, with a snake on top. And like Lord Shiva, he also wears a snake around his neck. Brahma. The origins of the word and the philosophy of Brahma are not known until recently. Several related words such as the infinite reality, Brahman, and Imam, Brahmana, are found in Vedic literature. The existence of a god named Brahma is attested to in the Vedic text. The difference between the spiritual concept of Brahman and the god Brahma is an abstract metaphysical concept in Hinduism, whereas the latter is one of the many masculine deities in Hindu mythology. The spiritual concept of distant Brahman. Some scientists conclude that Lord Brahma may have appeared as a personal conception, and this icon is seen from the impersonal universal principle called Brahman. Brahma is the creator deity in the Hindu Trimurti. He has 4 faces, looking in 4 directions. Brahma is also known as Swayambhu, Vajrayana, and the creator of the 4 Vedas, one from each of his mouths. Brahma is identified with the Vedic deity Prajapati. As well as being related to Kama and Hiranyagarbha, cosmic egg, it is more prominently mentioned in the Vedic epic Hinduism and mythology in the Puranas. In the epics, he is combined with Purusha. Brahma, along with Vishnu and Shiva, is part of the Hindu trinity. However, ancient Hindu texts mention other trinity of gods or goddesses that do not belong to Brahma. Brahma in the view of Buddhism differs from Hinduism, in that Buddhism denies the concepts of both Brahman and Atman in ancient Hindu literature, and argues for sunyata, emptiness, and the concept of anatta, non-self, no soul instead. Brahma is the foremost deity, deva, and heavenly king in Buddhism. He was adopted from other Indian religions which he considered the protector of the teachings Dharmapala, and he was never described in the early Buddhist texts as creator god. In Buddhist tradition, it is the god Brahma who appeared before Buddha. Brahma is a part of Buddhist cosmology. Inhabiting the heavenly realm of rebirth is called the Brahma Loka, the world's most sought after for the afterlife and reincarnation in the Buddhist tradition. Brahma is commonly represented in Buddhist culture as a deity with 4 faces and 4 arms, and variants of him are found in both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhist cultures. In the explanation that has been circulating so far for the caloric inscription listed, the word Brahma identifies the similarities between Buddhist and Hindu teachings, while in the concept of Brahman philosophy is, the spiritual concept of Brahman is much older than Buddhism and Hinduism, is in its development in the teachings. The Hindu concept of Brahman as Brahma as the creator god in the Trimurti of Hinduism. Contrary to the Buddhist concept of view, Brahma is never depicted in early Buddhist texts as a creator god. The conclusion is, it is not appropriate if the explanation that mentions the word Brahma is a claim that Sailendra adheres to Mahayana Buddhism. Sailendra in the information stated on the caloric inscription is not and does not adhere to Mahayana Buddhism or Hinduism. Siwu Temple. The largest Siwu Temple complex in the Prambanan area, with a rectangular area of 185 meters in the north-south and 165 meters east-west. There is an entrance at the four cardinal directions, but the main entrance is on the east side. Each entrance is guarded by twin Dwarapala statues. There are 249 buildings in the complex. There are 240 small temples, called Perwara Wali temples, with a similar design arranged in four concentric rectangular rows. The two outer rows are arranged closer together and consist of 168 smaller temples, while the two inner rows, arranged at specific intervals, consist of 72 temples. The 249 temples located in the second area are all made with square frames but vary by different statues and orientations. Dwarapala. In Sanskrit, Dwara, gates, gates, Dwarala, gates, gates, Dwarapala, Dwarapati, statue, doorman. Most of the large temples in ancient Java were guarded by a pair of Dwarapala statues, as gatekeepers. The twin giants are usually placed flanking the entrance at the front of the temple, or the four cardinal points. The Dwarapala takes the form of two giants. The Dwarapala is mostly depicted as a burly and somewhat fat giant, with a fierce face, round, bulging eyes, fang teeth, curly hair and a mustache, with a round belly. Giants are usually depicted wielding clubs and sometimes knives as weapons. The giant Dwarapala Singhasari near Malong, East Java, which is 3.7 meters high. The most prominent Dwarapala statues are at the Siwu Temple, each pair guarding the four corners of the large temple complex, a total of 8 large Dwarapala statues in perfect condition. Another example is 2 pairs of Dwarapala guarding the twin temples of Playosan. The most prominent Dwarapala statue is in the Siwu Temple, Java, Indonesia. The largest Dwarapala statue, Singhasari, Java, Indonesia. A pair of male and female Dwarapala statues guard the gate of a temple. Dwarapala statue at Banteay Kade in Angkor, Cambodia. The Dwarapala statue is located in the Chichen Itza Temple complex, a heritage from the M tribe, located on the Yucatan Peninsula, Central America. Dwarapala statue of Sukhothai in Ayutthaya, Thailand. Century Dwarapala statue from Indrapura, Dong Duong, Champa, Vietnam. Dwarapala Yaksha Grand Palace statue, Bangkok, Thailand. Dwarapala statue at the entrance to Hattadij, Polonnaruwa, Sri Lanka. Dwarapala statue in Elephanta, India. Let us examine and re-examine the circulating sentences, and it is considered standard that Manjushri and Siwu temples which are considered identical with the teachings of Buddhism in the sentence. This reference to Hindu deities in Buddhist temples signifies the Tantrayana, Vajrayana influence of Buddhism. The temple dedicated to Manjushri is identified as Kandi Siwu. Take a sentence. Reference to Hindu deities in Buddhist temples is not quite right. And one thing seems impossible because the gods in the view of Hinduism have very different meanings in the view of Buddhism. As the above explanation of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva and the main gods in Hinduism do not appear in Buddhist temples. While the Tantrayana in Buddhism and Hinduism also appears even in almost all previous philosophies in India, likewise in the Siwu Temple, this building clearly displays the dominant Dwarapala statue, and the Dwarapala statue also never even appears or is in Buddhist places of worship. Even in some of the pictures above, the Dwarapala statue is in the Chichen Itza Temple complex, a relic of the Mayans, which is currently located on the Yucatan Peninsula, Central America. The conclusion of the discussion about Siwu Temple, which is strengthened by the Dwarapala statue, is that the name listed on the caloric inscription as Sailendra is associated with Manjushri, and Siwu Temple, which contains the Dwarapala statue, is not appropriate if Sailendra adheres to Buddhist teachings. The teaching philosophy that underlies the building is non-Buddhist or Hindu teaching originating from India. These teachings are the original teachings of the archipelago, which even underlie the philosophy of teachings that are in Indian soil. For this explanation, it is in a different book that was made by the author of this book. Let us continue to know the interpretation of the caloric inscription about Manjushri. We will find out in more detail by observing and studying the word Manjushri in the Manjushri and Manjusagra inscriptions. Manjusri inscription. The Manjusri inscription is a manuscript engraved on the back of the Manjusri statue, dated 1343, originally placed in Kandy Jago, now stored in the National Museum with inventory number D. 214. Manjusri inscription. Information. This inscription is carved on the Manjusri statue with Old Javanese and Sanskrit characters. At first it was found in Kandy Jago in the village district of Tumpang, Malong Regency. Currently the Manjusri statue is stored in the Ethnology Museum Berlin. Meanwhile, the duplicate is stored in the Jakarta National Museum with inventory number D. 214. Source. De inscriptie op het Manjukri beeld van 1265 Kaka, FDK Bosch. Literacy. Aryavansad Majusras supratistita, Pakasadvisasenkab Dharmavardhyai Jinale, Rajye Srivararajapatniwijit, H. Tadbansaja Sudati Kakar Javamahidal Varagwanar Datiav. Pradataro Jinalayapur. National History of Indonesia. Ancient Times, Interpretation of History of the State of Indonesian History, Satyawati Suleman Ratprasasti.blogspot.com. Prasadam Atyudputam Matatadasarjanan Samasukam Nedam Bhava Tatpara, Isaka 1265. Translation of the Manjusri inscription. A statue of Manjusri was placed in the Jinalaya temple by Arya Wangsadaraja. In the kingdom ruled by the main Rajapatni, Aditya Warman, Tadbansaja, born to his family, Mantri Pradatara, at Bumi Jawa, founded a temple at Jinalayapura, in order to bring mother and father to complete happiness, in 1265 Saka. Reviews of the Manjushri inscription that have been circulating so far. The transcription has been discussed by H. Kern and published in the work of J.L.A. Brandis, Jandi Singasari, 1909. This inscription consists of two parts. The first is on the face above the statue, which consists of 3 lines of writing. The second part is carved on the back of the statue with 7 lines of writing. This inscription dates from 1265 Saka. This inscription has been discussed by FDK Bosch in De Encryptie op net Manjukri beeld van 1265 Kaka, BKI, 77, 1921, 194, 201. Other researchers who have discussed this inscription include R. Pitono, 1966, and Maki Suhadi, 1990. The Jago Temple was originally founded by order of King Kertanagara to honor his father, King Wisnuwardhana, who died in 1268 AD. The content of this inscription is about the placement of a Manjusri statue by Aditya Warman at the Jina Shrine in Saka 1265. According to Bosch's interpretation of the inscription, it is possible that Aditya Warman built an additional temple in the Jago Temple field, or perhaps the temple that was founded in 1280 AD had collapsed and was replaced with a new temple. There is no remnant of the large building beside the present Jago Temple, which suggests that the second explanation makes more sense. According to Stutterheim's analysis, the relief styles and carvings on the temple prove that the present temple is newer than the one from the 13th century. Manjusri is a bodhisattva, usually manifested as a young man, who wields a sword, unsheathed in one hand, and a book in the other. The sword is intended as a tool for eliminating curiosity and falsehood, while the book contains teachings on the 10 main practices, the ideals of the bodhisattva, called paramitas. In general, the description above is in accordance with the shape of the Manjusri statue from Singosari, but there are also differences. Manjusri statue from Singosari in the form of a nobleman, with a high crown, sitting cross-legged, his right hand holding a keris, his left hand attached to his chest. The Paramita book is located in his lap. On the 4 corners of the seat back there is the same statue in small pieces. Lotus leaves adorn the right and left side of the seat back. A part of the charter adorns the top. Perhaps the figure portrayed as Manjusri is Pu Adityawarman himself. Because he was a noble, with the rank of Reda Mantri in the Tribuanatungadui government, a cousin of the late Jayanagara, and his kinship with Rajapatni was based on his father's lineage named Adwayawarman, as stated in the Rajo Kabur inscription. It seems that Adwaya can be compared to Adwayabrahma, a Maham minister from Singhasari, who was recorded in the old Javanese charter Amogapasa in 1286 AD. The charter strengthens the notion that minister Adwayabrahma is a Kirtanagara family. By itself has a close family relationship with Rajapatni. The offering of the Manjusri statue is very appropriate because both Adityawarman and Rajapatni are Buddhist. Adityawarman's name began to be recorded for the first time in the Blatar inscription dated 1330, which mentions Arya Dwaraja Pu Aditya as a Reda Mantri. Pu Aditya's name is still recorded as Reda Mantri in the Inglawang inscription OJO. LXXXIV or D.38, which dates from around 1345 AD. In the inscription, it is mentioned in the group of signs, Rakrayan the Redamantri sang Arya Dwaraja Pu Aditya and sang Arya Dwaraja Pu Narayana. Then followed by the mention of the Panka Wilwatikta headed by the Rakrayan Pada Majapahit Pu Gajamata and Rakrayan Pada Kahuripan. In the Manjusri inscription, it is stated that Adityawarman served as minister of Pradatara. It can be ascertained that the term Pradatara is the same as Reda Mantri in the Blatar inscription and Inglawang inscription above, and Adityawarman is the same as Pu Aditya. It is suspected that Adityawarman is a descendant of Dayadara Jinga from his marriage to Maham minister Adwaya. Adityawarman is a cousin of Jayanagara, who has kinship with the Singhasari kings. Perhaps that is why he was appointed as a Reda Mantri. In the Pararadan it is stated that Dara Jinga was married to a person, Deva, knight the son of Lord Janaka who had the title Sri Marmadewa and later became king in Malayu with the title Inhaseka Aji Mantralat. The king of Malayu, who had the title Aji Mantralat, was identified with Adityawarman. In 1347 AD that Adityawarman had become king of Malayu. It is suspected that he married a cousin so that the throne was easily obtained. Note as an original quote, not a statement by the author. This is the publication of Fitna, to the best son of Nusantara, Adityawarman, which has been published and is considered to be correct. See the clarification based on academic studies. Written in public thus. Before Islam flourished in Java, there were several schools of belief such as devotees of Shiva, Vishnu, Hindu, Sogata, Buddha, and Kapatayan. Over time, there was a syncretism of beliefs, one of which was a splinter sect from Shiva and Mahayana syncretism. The ritual begins with the procession of eating meat and fish in a crowd, then they dance and drink until they get drunk. In a state of withdrawal, the adherents have mass intercourse. The ceremony ends with meditation, when their bodies have lost their lust. It's incorrect publication. On a special level, meat, fish and drink are ritually replaced by corpses, suro fish and human blood which are killed as offerings. It's incorrect publication. One of the legendary figures who became adherents was Adityawarman, the Majapahit ruler who ruled the Swarnadipa region, crowned leader of Pagaruyang Minangkabau after successfully completing the task of expanding Majapahit to Bali with Gajamata. It's untrue publication. Rebuttal and clarification of Santosaba. Drinking human flesh and blood. This is slander. Let's look at the academic clarification and not towards Sarah, by looking at the sentence that will invalidate the publication of bad image from all of the above writings. We look at each word from devotee of Shiva, Vishnu, Hindu, Sogata, Buddha, syncretism of belief, a splinter sect of Shiva, and Mahayana syncretism. When was Hindu India formally born? When and what was the name of the missionaries who came to the archipelago? Is it true that Hindu was adopted by the king of Java as well as Adityawarman? Check out the rebuttal as well as the clarification based in the study and academic study. Literacy study of Hinduism is a fusion or synthesis of various traditions and cultures in India, starting with Brahmanism, ancient Vedic religion, or Vedic-based. This synthesis emerged around 500 to 200 BC, with diverse roots and without founding figures growing side by side. With Buddhism up to the 8th century, from North India, Hindu synthesis, spread to the south. The end of the 18th century onwards, the British called the inhabitants Hindustan, that is, a nation to the southwest of India. Hindu, be the equivalent term for Indian, who is not Muslim, not Sikh, not Jaina, not Christian, not Buddhist, covering a wide range of adherents and practitioners of different traditional beliefs. The suffix ism was added to the word Hindu around the 1830s to refer to religion. Then the term was accepted by the Indians themselves in terms of building national identity against colonialism. Hinduism was reaffirmed as a gathering place for coherent and independent traditions, supported by Sanskritization. Since the 19th century, under the dominance of Western colonialism and Indology, when the term Hinduism came into wide use, and there is an unwritten rule that saints do not spread outward teachings. So, from the explanation above, we understand that the term Hindu as an antonym to other beliefs around the early 16th century, then the word Hindu, with the addition of ism, was added to the word Hindu around the 1830s to refer to culture and religion. Meaning, Hindu teaching refers to religion. In India there was only around 1830, meaning this formally, Hinduism. India existed after the era of the kings of the archipelago embracing Islam in the 11th century. Historian S.Q. Fatimi mentioned that in the year 100 Hijriya, 718 AD, Maharaja Sriwijaya, Sri Indrawarman sent a letter to the Caliph Umar bin Abdul Aziz of the Umayyad Caliphate. Sri Indrawarman, the ancestor of Adityawarman. Those who live in Sumatra already know Islam, in 718 AD. How Adityawarman is called a Shiva devotee, Vishnu, Hindu. While Hindu formally refers to the new religion around the 1830s. Religion in Bali was originally named Religion of Tirtha, then became Hindu Bali. This new name was in Temple in 1950. Clearly Balinese teachings are not from India, because Bali calls God Ida Hyang Widiwasa, not Krishna. Further clarification on Mahayana. Mahayana. How is its history and spread? When and who was the Indian Mahayana missionary to the archipelago? Buddhism. With his character Siddhartha Gautama 563 to 483 BC, after the Third Buddhist Council, various schools of Buddhism began to appear. Mahayana and Theravada Buddhism. The term Mahayana began to appear in the 1st century AD in northern India, its development until the 5th century AD, later in domination by Vajrayana until the 8th century in India. What about the archipelago? Look carefully, because this explanation is different from what is currently circulating in published. Bhikkhu Ashin Jinarakita, or the Bonan, also known as Su Kong, was born in Bogor, Indonesia, went to study Dhamma in Theravada-based Burma. He underwent Vipassana at Mahasana Sasana Yekta Meditation Training Center, Rangoon, received special guidance from Yaunayanathara Sayadaw, and on the 17th of January 1955 he returned to Indonesia, bringing joy to Buddhist sympathizers in Indonesia. He saw that his history had been taught under the guidance of teachers from the Mahayana and Theravada schools. Buddhism should not be divided into different sects. The most important excavation by Indonesian Buddhist scholars at that time was the concept of divinity in Buddhism, which was adopted from various studies of ancient texts in the book Sanghyang Kamahayanikan, the teachings of the Indonesian nation's ancestors, namely the concept of Hyang Widi Tunggal, and above. On this basis the state entered Buddhism into one of the official religions of the state. Meaning, the term Mahayana in Indonesia was only existed after 1955, when Ashin Jinarakita returned to Indonesia and when the state allowed the national Waisak ceremony at Borobudur the 22nd of May 1953. When and who were the Mahayana missionaries who had been to the archipelago? Facts: in the archipelago in the 4th to 7th century AD, Chinese pilgrims who came to the archipelago were to study and record. Does not bring teachings from his country and then spread to the archipelago. Based in the Chinese student's travel logbook, translated and given notes by Korean from the Chinese text by James Legge, Chinese pilgrims who came to the archipelago to learn were Sung Yun 1, 142, 138 B.C. Fa Huan 337-422 ad. Sung Yun 2, 518-521 ad. Haiyan, Sang 602-664 ad. Wei Ning 664-667 ad. It Xing 671-695 ad. Fa Huan 337-422 ad. On the way to Javadvipa, Fa Huan saw and noted a building with a statue in it beside a large tree. This is a Mendit site. In 399 to 414 AD, Fa Huan on a journey in Svarnadvipa saw and recorded, following the river Po Nai, is the river Panay, Kampar, at the place where the students made movements, walked in circles, circled. Tope. Stupas also 4 teachers sitting in 4 corners. In this place the tower has been erected, Pradaksina Prasawiya, Tawaf Dharmic ritual in Muaratakas. Sung Yun 518 to 521 AD learned and recorded the existence of power which he called Saka Kasatrapas. From the identification of coins it is thought to have existed around the year 225 AD with the picture. Tope is in the Muarataka stupa through equinox, not Sri Lanka. In 602 to 664 AD, Haiyan Sang studied and recorded what he saw in Svarnadvipa. There was a stupa built by the king, about 200 feet high, near which there is a sign where the Tathagata is walking around. Wei Ning 664 AD 667 AD traveled for 3 years on the island of Java learning and translating a sutra, understanding life after death. In this archipelago is called Svarga, not Nirvana. Translation is assisted by a Javanese expert named Jnanabhadra. Ising or Yi Jing, years 671-695, ad came to Nusantara 3 times departing from Guangzhou sailing 20 days, stayed for 10 years in Sriwijaya 685 to 695 AD. He stayed for 6 months in Sriwijaya, 2 months in Malayu to study science, Sabdavidya, or Sanskrit grammar, Pankavidya, medicine, logic, arts, crafts and the science of managing the mind. Atisa Dipamkara Shranyana, 1013 AD, he traveled to Srivijaya, stayed for 12 years to study, then returned to India, died 1054 in Naitang, Tibet. Atisa Dipamkara Shranyana offered many jewels and gold. His followers also offered 1 gold coin for each of his students. Guru Dharmakirti Suvarnadvipa. Guru Dharmakirti Suvarnadvipa offered Budarapang to Dipamkara, and he stayed at the Silver Umbrella Palace in Suvarnadvipa for 12 years. While here he slept on the floor. At the foot of his master's bed as a sign of respect for the pupil to the teacher. So in the archipelago in the 4th to 7th centuries AD, Chinese pilgrims came to learn about the Dharmic original teachings of the ancestors of the archipelago nation called Dhamma, not bringing teachings from his country and then spread them in the archipelago. That pre-Islam in the archipelago is not Hindu or Buddhist. The king and his kingdom adhere to the original Dharmic teachings of the archipelago's ancestors called Dhamma. This teaching in the early days long before 500 BC was studied in Svarnadvipa, depicted in Borobudur and perfectly preserved in Bali, which underlies the birth of 3 teachings in Indian land. The publication of Eating Human Flesh to the best son of the archipelago, Aditya Warman, is slander, must be removed from the history book of education, replaced by 3 teachings that were born in India, originating from the archipelago. This is a fact. Before we discuss Manjushri more deeply on the Manjushri inscription and Manjusagra inscription, the author will remember Manjushri's understanding of the Mahayana Buddhist view, namely, in Mahayana Buddhism, scholars have identified Manjusri as the oldest and most significant bodhisattva in Mahayana literature. The first Manjusri is mentioned at the beginning of the Mahayana Sutras like the Prajnaparamita Sutra, and through this association very early in tradition it came to symbolize the embodiment of prajna, transcendent wisdom. Vajrayana Buddhism. In Vajrayana Buddhism, Manjusri is a deity in the ritual application of meditation, and is considered a fully enlightened Buddha. In Shingon Buddhism, he is one of the 3 Buddhas. He is a figure in many esoteric texts such as Manjusri Mula Kalpa and Manjusri Namasam Jati. His wife in some traditions is Saraswati. Manjusri Mula Kalpa, later classified in the Kriyatantra, states that the mantras taught in Saiva, Garuda and Vaisnava Tantra seems to be the more effective metaphor applied by Buddhists because they were all originally based in the Manjushri view. An example of Manjushri's wisdom teachings can be found in the Saptasadika Prajnaparamita Sutra, Taisho Tripitaka 232. This sutra contains a dialogue between Manjushri and Buddha in Samadhi, SKT. Ekavyuha Samadhi. Sheng Yen adopted Manjushri teachings to enter Samadhi naturally through transcendent wisdom. The conclusion from Manjushri in the explanation above is that the philosophy that underlies the tapa ritual exists in almost every philosophical view in India as well as in Hinduism. The philosophy of Manjushri is identical to the ritual of the tapa procession in Indonesian. The tapa procession in Buddhist terms is yoga. One of the books that describes it is Samadhi, in a large group of Buddhist schools included in the Vajrayana school. The claims so far circulating about the Sailendra Wangsa who founded Borobudur are Mahayana Buddhists based in the Vajrayana school of Buddhism, is incorrect. The first Manjushri are mentioned at the beginning of the Mahayana Sutras such as the Prajnaparamita Sutras in many esoteric texts such as Manjushri Mula Kalpa and Manjushri Namasamjati. Manjushri Mula Kalpa, which was later classified in the Kriyatantra, states that the mantras taught in Saiva, Garuda and Vaisnava Tantra. We will understand what Saiva, Garuda and Vaisnava are these terms in Buddhism. Saiva, Shaivism or Saivism, Sanskrit, Saiva Pantha, lights up. Shiva's path, also known as Shivaism, Nepali, Saivam, is one of the main branches of Sanathan Dharma, Hinduism, worshipping Shiva as the highest. Shiva is sometimes depicted as the god Bhairava. Followers of Shaivam are called Shaivas, Saivas, Shaivites, or Saivarkals. Early forms of Shiva worship may have been practiced. In the Indus Valley Civilization, which peaked around 2500-2000 BC. Artifacts from Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa and others are based on archaeological sites of northwest India and Pakistan, including lingams and Pashupati artifacts. Based on these archaeological sites, it is interpreted as having signs of ritual worship to Shiva. Pashupati, Sanskrit Pasupati, has been interpreted by some scientists as the prototype of Shiva. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 400-200 BC, is an early textual exposition of Shaivism's systematic philosophy. The Shiva Rahasya Purana, and Apapurana is an important scriptural text. According to the Gavin Flood, the formation of the Saiva tradition began to take place during the period from 200 BC to 100 AD. Shiva's ascension to a major position in the philosophical ranks of India is identified with the naming of a number of deities in the Vedic scriptures, including Purusha, Rudra, Agni, Indra, Prajapati, Vayu, and others. So the conclusion that can be drawn about the word Manjushri which has been claimed so far is that it is only a teaching of Buddhism that can be refuted by having traced the Kriyatantra book, Manjushrimulakalpa. After we understand the word Saiva, even Saiva philosophy and worship existed before Buddhism and Hinduism existed, namely in the Harappa civilization in Mohenjo-Daro around 2500-2000 BC. This proves that the word Manjushri is not only in the teachings of Indian Buddhism and Hinduism, but his philosophy predates the existence of Hindu and Buddha teachings. This is the same as the explanation for the words Vaisnava and Garuda. That is what historians call the Brahmanism precept of the Vedas. Brahmanism is a teaching brought by the Saka or Arya ancestors of the previous Indonesian archipelago, namely, original Dharmak, which was depicted in Borobudur and until now it is perfectly preserved in Bali. This, original Dharmak, underlies the birth of the Hindu, Buddha, Jaina teachings after the Veda was written in India. Vaisnava, the origin of the emergence of Vaishnavism is not yet known clearly, due to the lack of supporting evidence which is considered definite and historical sources are scarce. According to Dalal, the origin may be in the Veda deity Bhaga, who gave rise to Bhagavatism. According to the Prachado Solis, in the Vedas, Lord Nara and Narayana are forms of one of the Vedic roots of Vaishnavism. According to Dandekar, Vaishnavism may have emerged from the amalgamation of several ancient theistic traditions, in which various gods were integrated as different avatars of the same god. In Dandekar's theory, Vaishnavism appeared at the end of the Vedic period, closely before the second urbanization of northern India, in the 7th to the 4th century BC. Vasudeva and Krishna, the divine tribal heroes and religious leaders of the Yadavas, became famous, merged into Bhagavan Vasudeva Krsna, because of the close relationship between Vrsnis and Yadavas. This initial stage was established during the Panini, 4th century BC, which, in his book Astadhyayi, describes the word Vasudevaka as Bhakta, devotee, of Vasudeva. This was followed in association with the Gopala Krsna cult of the cowherd community of Abhiras in the 4th century. The character Gopala Krishna is often considered non-Vedic. According to Dandekar, the merger or the consolidation of the position of Krishnaism between the heterodox Ramana movement and the orthodox Vedic religion. Dandekar declared later, Krishnaism, joining Rigvedic Vishnu. The syncretism of various traditions and Vedism makes Vaishnavism. It was at this stage that Vishnu of the Rig Veda assimilated into non-Vedic Krishnaism and became the equivalent of a supreme god. The emergence of Krishna as one of the avatars, Vishnu appears in the epic Sanskrit period in the early century AD. The Bhagavad Gita is included in the Mahabharata as the main text for Krishnaism. It finally included the cult of Narayana, which later Vaishnavism became Brahmanism. The Narayana cult probably originated in Badari, the northern region of Hindu Kush, and was absorbed into Vedic orthodoxy as Purusa Narayana. Purusa Narayana might later turn into Arjuna and Krishna. This complex history is reflected in the two major historical denominations of the Vaishnavism Bhagavats, the Vasudeva Krishna, and the Vaishnavism Brahman followers, whereas the Pakaratrans consider Narayana to be their founder, and the followers of the Vaishnavism Tantra. This proves that the word Manjushri is not only in Buddhism and Hinduism in India, but that the philosophy has existed before Hinduism and Buddhism existed. Manjusrimulakalpa, which was later classified in the Kriyatantra, Vaisnava explained the above. Garuda Purana is one of 18 Mahapurana text genres in Hinduism. It is a part of Vaishnavism literature, mainly centered around Hinduism and the god Vishnu who praises all the gods. Composed in Sanskrit, the earliest versions of the text may have been compiled in the 1 CE millennium, perhaps even expanded and changed over a long period of time. Garuda Purana in some of its texts is known in various versions, which contain between 8,000 and 19,000 verses, in a collection related to a very large collection and various topics. Namely texts containing cosmology, mythology, the relationship between gods, ethics, good versus evil, various Hindu philosophies, yoga theory, the theory of heaven and hell, with karma and rebirth, ancestral rituals and soteriology, rivers and geography, types of minerals and stones, testing methods for gem quality, lists of plants and spices, basic treatment of various diseases and their symptoms, various medicines, aphrodisiacs, contraceptives, Hindu calendar, astronomy, moon, planets, astrology, architecture, house building, features important from Hindu building, rites of passage, charity and gift-taking, economy, thrift, the duties of a king, politics, state officials and their roles and how they promise, literary genres, grammar rules, and other topics. The final chapters discuss how to practice yoga, Samkhya and Advaita types, personal development and the benefits of self-knowledge. The Padma Purana categorizes it as the Garuda Purana, Bhagavata Purana and Vishnu Purana, and also as the Sattva Purana, Purana representing goodness and purity. The text, like all Mahapuranas, associated with sages in the Veda Vyasa belongs to the Hindu tradition. When and who is the author of this text is not known. Pinchman predicts that the text existed in the first millennium of the general era, but it was probably composed and changed over a long period of time. Geets and others place the first version of the text only between the 4th century AD and the 11th century. Leadbeater states that the text is likely from around 900 CE, given that it includes chapters in yoga and tantra practice whose techniques were probably developed later. Some other historians conclude that the original gist of the text may be from the 1st century AD, and additional chapters were added later through the 6th century, or later. The version of the Garuda Purana that has survived into the modern era, Dalal stated the possibility of 800-1000 CE with parts added in 2 millennia. Pinchman shows 850-1000 CE. Chaudhary and Banerjee, and Hazra another view. The text could not exist from the previous 10th century or 11th century AD. About history text exists in many versions, with varying number of chapters, and very different content. Some of the Garuda Purana manuscripts are known as Sauparna Purana, mentioned in Bhagavata Purana chapter 12.13, Tarksya Purana. Persian scholar al-Biruni who visited India mentioned this name, and Vinayataya Purana, mentioned in Vayu Purana chapters 242 and 104.8. In the 19th century and the 20th century, a text called Garuda Puranasaradhara was published, later translated by Ernest Wood and S.V. Subramaniam. Ludo Rocher in this regard, expressed great confusion due to the wrong interpretation of the Garuda Purana. It is possible that this is a misidentification first discovered by Albrecht Weber. Garuda Puranasaradhara is actually the original Bhāsya by Nanidarama, which quotes part of the current version that does not have the Garuda Purana and other Indian texts. The earliest translation of a version of the Garuda Purana, by Manmata Nath Dutt, was published in the early 20th century. We will examine the writing, reviews of Manjushri inscriptions that have been circulating so far on words or sentences marked in red. To know more about Manjushri, whose words are written on the Manjushri statue originally found in Jago Temple, we will know more about its place, namely. From the explanation above we find the meaning of the word Garuda, which in several books is found in the philosophical teachings that are the basis of Hinduism in India, regarding the origin of the teachings recorded in the word Garuda, has not been found who and when the author or who initiated it. However, this tells us that the word Garuda, and the thing that underlies its philosophy, which is the basis of Vaisnava in Hinduism, is a philosophy that predates Hinduism and Buddhism in India. Means the philosophy of Garuda, which is mentioned in the above sentence regarding the explanation of the word Manjushri, in the Manjushri inscription associated with the Sailendra dynasty is Manjushri. In Buddhism and Hinduism, it can be said that they are even similar, but that does not mean the existing Manjushri on the inscription is a representation of Buddhist or Hindu teachings. This also explains that the Sailendra Wangsa mentioned in the inscription is not Hindu or Buddhist as in India. Borobudur True Back History Book. Part 3 to Part 4. The Works of Santosaba. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies and studies, it is not defaming ethnic races and religions, but in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. Indonesia Arya. By Santosaba. Exploration and Research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +62813 2132 9787.